What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's edition of the On Purpose podcast, where it's our privilege and pleasure to be here with you, to serve you, to show up with you, and just be part of your week. Something don't take for granted, and we're honored to have you here. This week, I'm excited to sit down and talk with somebody I've looked up to for a while. I just met him over the summer when we were back in Butte, Montana for my mom's birthday, and he happened to just be having a race, 100-mile race he was putting on called the Copper Kings 100. And my sister, my mom, and I went up there to cheer in some of the finishers and just for the first time get a feel for what one of these events was like. And it was super humbling. And it was amazing to see all the work and the dedication that went into putting on an event like this and the triumph of the human spirit to overcome such adversity for such long periods of time and still persevere. So this week I wanted to talk with the creator of this and get his story. So this week's guest is no stranger to the edge of human endurance. Wes Plate is an ultra runner whose resume reads like a map of the impossible. Cocodona 250, that's 250 miles. Moab 240. Tahoe 200, the Bigfoot 200, and recently the Arizona Monster 300. But Wes, what I love about him is he's not just chasing finish lines, he's chasing insight, grit, and the kind of growth that only comes when you put yourself out to test your limits. Through hundreds of races and thousands of miles, what Wes has built a reputation not for just finishing, but for reflecting. His storytelling, whether through the video, writing, or raw race reports, invites us into the highs, lows, and lessons learned of ultra running. He's candid about the setbacks, honest about the suffering, and generous with his wisdom earned along the way. So, in this conversation, we'll explore what it takes to keep moving when your body says stop, how Wes reframes failure, and why the trail continues to teach long after the race is over. But before we dive into this week's conversation, please like, subscribe, share on your favorite platforms. And if you have the financial means and the desire, join us over on Patreon, where for as little as $2 a month, you can contribute directly to helping us reach our goal of becoming one of the most impactful podcasts in the world. Thank you for being here. Enjoy this week's conversation with Wes Plate. Wes, my newest friend, welcome to the On Purpose podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm excited to talk with you.
Oh, I'm excited to have you here. I'm honored to bring you on the show. And I want to just say, first off, say thank you for what you're doing. And what I mean by that is thank you for sharing the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows that is your life, whether in ultra running or just in life, because those stories are so important. And when people only see our highlights, it's hard to connect because we don't necessarily feel like, oh, we're doing that. But when we see like, man, this guy's doing it and he's struggling and he's sharing it, we all identify with that. And I think that's so important in today's world. So thank you for the transparency, honesty, and realness with what you share in your journey.
Yeah, thank you for that. I don't know how else to do it except for just share the experiences that I have and to try to be as transparent and honest and just show it all as much as I can. But I've also received quite a lot of feedback from other runners who I've met at races, and they've told me that they really appreciate when I show in my videos that, the rough parts as well as the good parts. Because I think that it helps them better ready to prepare and plan for their own adventures when they know that the rough patches are just a part of it, and it's not anything to be concerned about. It's real. It's gonna happen. And so yeah, I just try to be real and show my journey, and people seem to like it. So I'm really glad that it's connected well with you too.
Oh, dude, I love it. I've watched so many of your videos getting ready for this, and especially after meeting you at the Copper Kings 100 this summer, and you've been gracious enough to take a few moments out of your time because you were busy as hell to introduce yourself. And then, yeah, just watching the videos. And I think at least what attracted me to trail running and something I want to ask you about is trail running is literally like a 2 hour, a 5 hour, a week long, depending on how long you're going, obviously, microcosm of life. right? And that there's going to be good, there's going to be bad, there's going to be euphoric, there's going to be tears, but they're all necessary because when you reach that finish line, it's all part of the story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's totally true. I was actually just mentioning this to a friend of mine yesterday. I was sharing with a friend how I've got struggles like everybody, and in life right now, I've got, there's some significant things that have got me quite worried. And my friend was just like, yeah, they're like, my friend said, think about it's like an ultra, life is like an ultra, and there's ups and downs. And I said, absolutely. And furthermore, I'm often reminding myself about the lessons that I learn on the trail, and I take them into my real life. Because, like you say, during a run, there's ups and there's downs. Uh, there are there are strategies for coping with very long, difficult sections. In a very long ultra, one of the things that I do is I just try to keep in mind, I just focus on the next aid station. Don't think about the entire race, but that focus on just the section that I'm currently working on. I try also take that into my real life. I try to think about like there are grand life-size problems in my life, but maybe I don't need to get stressed out about that. I'm going to instead just think about, hey, let's worry about paying this month's mortgage. We can worry about next month. So by you break down giant races into smaller bits, and I think breaking down life into smaller bits is helpful. And it's something that I wouldn't have considered if I hadn't learned that from running. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Running is such a metaphor for life, and we can learn so much from doing it.
And the other thing that I really love, Wes, is, I played sports my whole life, and there's a very distinct difference between the winner and the loser in wrestling and mixed martial arts. The feelings are going to be drastically different. There's no way around it. But in trail running, it doesn't matter if, yeah, obviously people love to be first, but if you're dead last, there's still people at the finish line. You're still being celebrated because you accomplished something. And it's less about beating the people around you than it is improving yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just a handful of people who are going to try to win a race, and good for them. I can't relate to that at all. But what I can relate to is I can relate to facing the challenge of the event and also the camaraderie that comes with the other runners. I think that everybody who isn't trying to win the race, we're all there to support each other. And it's one of the things I love about the culture of trail running is how we just are, it's all supportive. We're not really competing against each other. We're there to help each other get to the finish line. And yeah, you're exactly right. Even I think in some races, including my own race, we celebrate the last runner a lot more than we celebrate the first runner. It's the tenacity to be out there the longest and to push through and to get to the finish line. That's so impressive. And yeah, everybody at the middle and the back of the pack needs to feel just as valuable as the elites who are winning it. Um, but yeah, there's some great stories out there and really strong people making that happen, and we all need to be uplifted and supported.
And when I saw that and I started researching ultra running and getting deeper into this rabbit hole, what I realized is I love that mentality because it also correlates real life and that I don't need to be looking to only the superstars on TV, the sport professional as my role model, as somebody that like, oh, they've done everything right. I want to be them. A lot of times it's the people right shoulder to shoulder with us going through the highs and lows of life that are truly going to inspire you if you just take a minute to get to know their story.
Yeah, I think that the people in the middle and the back of the pack, a lot of those people are just regular people who have jobs and are trying to figure out their own journey through this all. And I find that to be inspiring to me far more than seeing what an elite who is sponsored and maybe has all kinds of free time because some of their expenses are handled for them. There's so much to be inspired by from regular people who are just out there just getting it done. And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that I've received feedback from other runners that they liked seeing my content on YouTube and they like watching me do my thing because I think that they see me as someone who is regular person like they are. And so I think that it can be a bit more inspiring. You can feel more connected to the people who are like you. And so that's why representation is important in all kinds of ways. Uh, But and I think I've really come to see that in just me, trying to show people how it's possible to finish these things and train for these things, while juggling the challenges of life.
Yeah, I love it. All right, Wes, before we get in too deep, like we can't just get in and go 250. This isn't Cocodona, my friend. I need to warm you up a little bit.
Warm up.
You ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right, Wes, you get one word to describe yourself. What's your word?
Hmm. It's a challenging one. Friendly.
That's a good one. What's a
At least I
favorite?
hope to be.
What's a favorite quote or a quote that's kind of stuck with you throughout your life?
When I started running ultras, I met an older ultra runner who gave me some advice, and the advice was to generally stay positive during races. But that runner also gave me a quote to help drive home the point of it. And ever since I've heard it, it's really been in the front of my mind. And so I like to share it with other people too. It's a quote from Henry Ford that says, "Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right." And the point of it is that if you start to go down a negative rabbit hole thinking about how something's going to fail, you're following a path towards failure. And you can actually talk yourself into failing just by thinking, "Oh, this isn't going to work." But if you try to stay positive and just remind yourself it is going to work, even if it's challenging, we'll get through this. Let's get through this. Be positive. That positive mindset can really set up the parameters for success. So that's the quote that I love, is that Henry Ford quote, because I think it's just so true. We just need to stay positive and don't let ourselves start to think too negatively, because the negative thoughts can become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So true. All right, Wes, if you get a theme song, like every time you get introduced to a new person or something, there's a theme song playing for you. What's your theme song?
Uh, my favorite band is called The Album Leaf, and they have a track called "The Light," which I think has been used in some movie soundtracks or TV shows or commercials or something. I think it's been out there in the world. The Album Leaf is generally a lesser known band, but this that track, I feel like it's almost like a soundtrack for my life. So that's what I'm gonna say.
All right, love
You'll have
it.
to listen to it.
Yeah, no, I do. That's one of the reasons I ask these questions, to be honest, Wes, is I like to learn stuff. Now I get new songs to listen to. And
Yeah.
this one, I always enjoy asking, what's a favorite book or a book you find yourself going back to?
I have to admit, I am one of the world's worst readers. I read a lot of books when I was younger, but man, in my adult life, I have read so few. But in the spirit of talking about running, there is a book that I did read that I have on my shelf that I recommend to others, called Fixing Your Feet. It's a great book that talks about why blisters happen, how blisters happen, and various strategies for dealing with both blisters as well as other problems that can happen with your feet. And in ultra running, foot care is one of the most important things athletes need to consider. So, yeah, check out Fixing Your Feet.
Is it because our shoes are too tight?
I that's the shoe the way that shoes are laced up and the tightness is a issue. Um, in fact, I even learned there are strategies for lacing in the book as well. So if you have like a high arch, it talks about maybe lace your shoes in this other way instead of the normal way, so that you don't end up with a lot of pressure on the top of your foot. So yeah, that kind of thing is in this book. It's so helpful.
Oh, interesting. I have to look it up because my toenails are taking a beating, my friend.
I believe it. I believe it.
All right, Wes, you get to have dinner with one person. They could have passed on or still be with us. Who would you want to have dinner with, and what would you want to ask them?
Hmm. So I love that question, because I've also heard the advice in life that you should never meet your heroes, because
Yeah.
then you find out that they're not as good as you thought. Um, wow, who would I want to have dinner with? That is a good question. Um, I have been lucky in my running career to have met some of my running heroes, people who had inspired me when I was starting. And so, I would say I would like to have dinner with Ben Light, uh, because when I was getting started in ultra running, he was very, very inspiring to me. We've since become friends, and now whenever I'm at an event where he is at, we seek each other out and give each other a hug and say hi. Um, and so, yeah, I'll say Ben, just because it'd be fun just to spend time with him at a meal and just talk more than just a, 5 minute, hey, let's catch up since the last time we visited with each other. Um, Ben's an incredible athlete and a really generous person, and I've just been really proud to call him friend now. Uh, so yeah, I think I would just talk with him about all of his adventures and how he stays motivated, and how get continue to get inspiration from him.
Oh, I love it. I love you. Feeling warmed up, Wes?
I feel warmed up.
Let's
Yes, sir.
start. I'm super interested in this. What actually got you started in ultras and how long ago was that?
I ran my first ultra in October of 2015, so we're coming up on 10 years since my first ultra. I started running about no, I'm sorry, 3.5 years before my first ultra is when I started running. So it was in early 2012. I was interested in getting into running. I had run in high school. When I got into college, I ran less and less. And I think that coincided with me drinking alcohol more and more. And so eventually I got to a point when in my early adulthood where I was pretty unhealthy. I'd gained a lot of weight. And every once in a while I wanted to run. I was kind of like I would think about how good it felt when I was feeling healthier and was more fit. So I would sometimes try to run, but my weight held me back because it added so much more difficulty to it. And so eventually I just didn't have the follow through to keep going. By 2012, I had gotten a lot healthier. In 2008, I had stopped drinking. And so over the course of the next few years, I dropped a lot of weight. I lost a total of 75 pounds from my heaviest to where I was at the beginning of 2012. And so at that time, I was like, I really want to get into running. And a friend of mine was, we were talking about this, and my friend showed me this Garmin watch he had recently got. And he was describing to me how he would go for a run and his Garmin watch would record the activity and then would post the activity to Strava. And I was looking at this whole system and I was just really excited by it because as I always loved watches. I love technology. I love everything about sharing experiences on the web. And so this whole thing was like, it felt like a shiny object that I needed to help inspire me. So I got myself my own Garmin watch and I started to do some light running in 2012. Not a lot, but just I would run maybe a mile or two every once in a while. Eventually, I built myself up to running a couple of 5Ks. And I didn't really have any plans until 2014. A friend invited me to run a half marathon with her, and that it was sort of the motivation I needed to take that next big step. So I trained for a half marathon, which I ran in the late summer of 2014, and it was a I didn't know what I was doing at all, and it was a challenging event. By mile 11, I was completely out of gas, and so I really struggled to finish it. But I did finish it, and I felt so excited and like I loved the feeling of finishing that race. So I spent a little bit of time getting better at the half marathon distance, but at the same time, I started to learn about ultras. Towards the end of 2014, I met some other runners in my local community who had experience running in ultra marathon races, and I thought, oh, that sounds awesome. So I started reading books about it, listening to podcasts about it, and that just sort of fueled me to finally I ran my first 50K in October of 2015, and it's just that was such an exciting opportunity, thing. I remember feeling like I'd really accomplished something big. Of course, it was painful too, but um, that's how I got there. That's how
What
I got
was
started.
what was your biggest takeaway from that race? That very first one.
Um, just like that to continue, you can continue to push through even when it hurts.
Mhm.
And I think I had read about pain caves. I had read about people really struggling in ultras and just pushing through. And so the mistake that I made in that first 50K was I had not really learned about electrolytes and hydration yet. So I had water bottles and there was water on the course. And so I was drinking water, but I was just drinking water. And so when I got to this aid station at mile 15, my legs started cramping up. And the volunteers asked me what I had been doing for electrolytes. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't even know. So they handed me a little Ziploc bag full of salt tablets.
Yeah.
And so I started, consuming those on the way back. And occasionally the cramping would subside, but it would come back. But I just kept telling myself, just keep going, push through, push through, push through. And it was a good learning for, aside from an injury that would totally derail you, some sort of broken limb or something. I can imagine you could get injured to the point where you can't continue. But if it's something like an electrolyte imbalance that's leading to a cramp, that's completely manageable. You can fix the electrolyte imbalance, but you can also push through some levels of pain. And so I learned a lot about just pushing through that you still can get to the finish line.
Yeah, such a good lesson in life too, right? Just
Yeah, for sure.
push through our difficult moments, and there's some discomfort, but it's going to be necessary because it leads us to where we're supposed to be.
Hmm.
So, so from that, you've Wes literally raced in almost all the iconic ultras in North America, right? Cocodona, Moab, Tahoe, Bigfoot, the Monster 300. What is it about these long multi-day races that keeps drawing you back to them?
There are so many things I love about multi-day events. There's, yeah, I sit down. I have so much to say about this. Um, there's, there's something in any ultra event. I think you're going to meet other people who are, kindred spirits, like-minded athletes who are obviously training for this thing and doing this thing. So in a lot of races, you'll meet somebody who you connect with, and you at least for those hours that you're together or moments you're together, you have a friend. And I've always loved meeting people in these events because I feel like I make some pretty cool connections. But the connections that are made in a multi-day event, I feel like are at a different level. You might see somebody on day one, you talk, how are things going? Oh yeah, I'm struggling. Yeah, I'm struggling, whatever. And then you might see them on day two, and it feels like a whole lifetime has passed since the last time you saw them. But then you see them on day two. How is day two going for you? Good or bad or whatever. And in a lot of these long races that I've done, it just happens where I end up with somebody whose pace is similar to me, and we just sort of leapfrog each other. And so over the course of 4 or 5 days, I see that person multiple times and check in with them, see how they're doing. And that level of connection is so much deeper and bigger because of those multiple exposures to each other. And it just feels so much more special, I think, to connect with people in these things. So that's one reason why I love them. Another reason why I love them is that I feel I get some amazingly good endorphins on day three. And I discovered this at Cocodona the first year. I was running through Sedona, and I was running like I had fresh legs, even though I had many, many, many miles, well over 100 miles on my legs at that point. But I ran like I was fresh. And I remember thinking like, wow, that's an amazing feeling. And so the next time I ran Cocodona, I kind of was paying attention. And again, on day three, I was feeling really good. So I've discovered in just about every race, the first couple days are a struggle to sort of fight against my body. My body's fighting, like, oh, why are we doing this again? This is too painful. But by day three, everything falls into place and I feel amazing. And I just love it. I just love that whole experience of going from struggle to feeling good. And so that's another reason. Another thing I love about these long races is if there is a problem, there's time to recover from it. In
Mm.
a shorter race, if something goes wrong, it can take you out. There's just won't be time to fix the injury or maybe it's an equipment issue. I don't know what the problem could be, but I had my very first 200-mile plus race was the Moab 240, and something happened on this giant climb up to the aid station at mile 120 that ended up causing me a hamstring injury. And so when I left that mile 120 aid station, I tried running, but my body was like, no, this isn't happening. It hurt way too much, but it didn't hurt to walk. And so I started walking, and then eventually I started walking pretty quick. And so I had to change my strategy for how I was going to approach the race. But over this next 2 days, my injury started to actually heal too. So I was able to start running a
Mm.
little bit more and a little bit more each day to the point where on the last day when I finished, I was actually able to run a little bit. So just that remarkable thing where our bodies can show their resilience, where they can heal and fix a problem that's happening mid-race, is something that can only happen in a longer event where there is that much time. So um, yeah, those are just some of the things I love about it.
That's
There's
awesome.
there's just so much great about these races. So there you go.
Yeah, you're right because you don't want you have time to not miss the next cutoff, right? You have
Yeah.
time to strategize. What do you think it is about your body that allows you to bounce back on day three and push like that?
I don't know. But I do know that I really do. I struggle earlier. Like day one is a day where there have been a few times where I have half, I say half because I don't think I was really considering dropping, but I wanted to drop so bad. I really wanted to quit. And my body was not having a good time. So I think that there is a little bit of a thing that happens where the body does rebel. The body is just like, this isn't what I want to do right now. But the brain, it's just I keep telling the body, no, this is what we're doing. Day two becomes a little bit easier. The body starts to come around. But I think by day three, my body just sort of gives in. And it's like, okay, fine, this is what we're doing. And of course, the training has given me the stamina, the endurance to continue to run or hike or whatever the movement is that I'm doing on day three. Yeah, I can't explain it, but it's pretty cool. And it to me, it's a reflection of just how strong
Mm.
we are as humans. If I'm experiencing this, anybody else can too. And certainly I've talked to other athletes who similarly struggle early in the event, but then once their body gets the message that this is what we're doing, that similarly their bodies also kind of fall into line. So I think that it's maybe I don't know if it's a universal experience, but I think it's not just me.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because what you said there, I was just thinking on so many levels. A lot of times in our life and running, whatever, when we hit that first obstacle where our body says we shouldn't do this, we listen to it and we don't push ourselves past it, right? And you can't really find out what you're truly capable of if you're going to stop the first time you hit resistance.
That's so true in training, right? Because everything about training is pushing the body just to be a little bit more uncomfortable to the point where eventually that discomfort now you become used to it and you acclimate to that. So then you need to up the challenge, so that that training effect can help. Um, and so yeah, I think that I totally I am with you on that. Um, I feel like I was going somewhere, but I think my brain just petered out on the on that thought. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's there. There is something that is truly like you said, it's a good reflection about life, even in this, about how um, I never would have known. I could never have learned that I was a good day three runner if I had quit running after one day. It's like I really needed to push it and challenge myself and really see where my limits were in order to discover that interesting thing about myself. So yeah, you're right.
What I love that you said, Wes, is it's going to come. So now when you do it again, by day three, you're going to get back to a place you feel good. So you have comfort in going through the difficult times. And
That's right.
you look forward to them because, like, oh man, when I start feeling like this, I know once I get through this, I'm going to feel better here. And that's so important for us to recognize about just ourselves is that there are struggles in all aspects, but usually on the other side of struggle is the better part of what we were after.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely right.
And I wanted to talk to you something about because one of the things I love that you share, Wes, is the DNF, so the did not finishes, right? Because that's always, like you said, on day one, 12 hours in, that's a very strong thought, right? If you just decide you're done, all this pain immediately goes away. So how do you process those conversations with yourself, and what have they taught you about just the resilience and who you are as a person?
Um, yeah, I think I've learned that, like you say, to just continue to struggle through the struggle because I know that if I do, it's going to get better. It's it's never happened to me in one of these events where I get to day three and day four and it still sucks like it did on day one. That just never it's never happened. So um I think it's taught me that, I'm I am a very strong athlete, and that even though I'm struggling in those early days or early moments, early miles of an event, I need to remember that, that struggle is just a part of what I need to do in order to get my body to to finally agree that this is what we're working towards. And that I think, if I want to compare that or feed that into like my life lessons and how can I live my life in that knowledge, um, it's I like to remind myself that until now, things in life have worked out. There's been struggles, and I've had to maybe make changes, but then in the end, things worked out and I was able to continue on. And so when I face struggles these days, I like to try to remember, well, in the past it's worked out. Chances are it's going to work out again. Just like in races, it's always been this pattern of getting better towards day 3, day 4. Chances are in those races that's also going to happen. Um, there's always the possibility that something's going to happen that's just unusual and different, and that's when you have to sort of now take a new approach and think about, okay, well, whatever the previous experience has taught me isn't happening now. So I think about the one DNF that I have in the 200-mile distance was a race up in Canada last September. Uh, I was actually having some respiratory issues earlier in the year, which made it a challenge for me to even start this race. But there were some other factors that led me to just not be interested in struggling any more than I had. And so I finally, I think maybe it was 20 hours into the race or something. I decided that I was going to allow myself to miss a cutoff because I wasn't having it. I wasn't interested in pursuing this particular challenge anymore. And instead, I switched my mentality and I switched my focus. And so after I dropped and took a nap, I went to the race headquarters and I said, "Hey, I'd like to volunteer at some of the aid stations." And I turned myself from a runner into a volunteer, which turns out that race was in desperate need of volunteers. And so I was able to go help out other runners at aid stations. One of my buddies needed a pacer for a section, so I paced somebody for a part of the race. And I ended up having so much fun that weekend, and it was an amazing time. I loved it. I wouldn't have had that experience of being able to volunteer and pace and give back and support other runners if I had not made that pivot. And so sometimes pivoting, sometimes stopping is what needs to happen. And then, weighing whether this is the time to quit or not, that can be the real heart of the challenge, right? Is this something that I should push through? This one in that particular event, I decided I didn't need to push through it. But yeah, it's DNFs are always a possibility in these races. It's never a guarantee that you're going to finish, which is why they're so challenging. But at the same time, not finishing a race doesn't need to define you. It doesn't, just because you DNF'd at a race doesn't mean that you're DNFing at life. I don't think that's the thing there, but there is always something to learn from these races. And I know I've met other athletes who have not finished a race because they hadn't learned something that they needed to learn. They didn't learn a foot care tactic that was important for that particular kind of event. They didn't learn a sleep strategy that was vital. So sometimes you need to DNF. You need to not finish so that you can better appreciate the challenge in front of you, or reevaluate your strategies and rethink things. So there's
Yeah,
a
and
lot
there's
there's a lot of thoughts about all this stuff.
yeah, and there's something to be learned there, right? And
Yeah, for
there's a
sure.
lesson that you couldn't have learned if you hadn't at least started
That's right.
and come up short of the goal.
Yeah, that's right.
But if you don't start, you won't learn that lesson altogether.
That's why I really try to preach a message of it's okay to DNF. It's okay because you just means that you needed to learn something.
Yeah.
And, I've heard it said that, making a mistake is there's nothing wrong with making mistakes, but what is wrong is not learning from the mistake or not learning from that learning opportunity. And so, yeah, it's okay to go off into a race that you're not totally prepared for just to see what you can do and not finish it, as long as you're using that as a learning experience, I think, because then, yeah, you get out there, put yourself into that challenging position that you otherwise wouldn't have been in. Yeah. And now the learning starts, and
Yeah.
let's see what you can do now.
Well, especially in such a there's so much of our society is risk adverse to even trying, right? We want to play life safe, especially as we get older, right? It's very common as we get older to kind of pull in the risk we're willing to take, to play life safe, to only do things we've always been doing that we're good at. And you really just shortchange a couple things, right? One, you might be great at something else, but because you never even tried, you don't open that box for yourself.
Right.
And two, you don't learn about yourself, right? If I'm only doing what I've already done and I'm good at, there's no lessons to be learned for me there.
Right. Absolutely.
So talk kind of stay on that. You switched recently from being a an athlete in the races to taking on the role of race director. Talk me through what led you to decide to do that and the evolution of the Copper Kings 100.
Oh man, this has been deep in my mind for a long time because there's more times than I can count in the last year. I've questioned why I decided to do this. Certainly one of the most stressful experiences of my life. But to rewind about how this even happened, one of the things I learned in my running career, especially in the multi-day things where I was out there for a long time, I found myself very connected to those places where I ran. I felt a very special connection to the earth, almost spiritual. You know, if I reflect back to even the very first time I ran Moab, I spent so much time researching the course, looking at maps, studying the elevation profiles, really feeling like I understood the ground, but of course I had never been there. So I really didn't understand it. But then I went and I ran it, and some of those assumptions about what the map meant suddenly became real to me. Later on, I went back and re-looked at the map again, and I was like, "Oh, now I understand that little turn," or things about things about the map were so much more interesting to me to look at after having run the event. And I felt so connected to Moab and all that dirt. Every race I did, I felt so connected to that space. And so I really started to think about how the planning and the running brought me into connection with that place. And so in Montana is a town called Butte. My family is from there. My parents were both born and raised there. I have a lot of aunts and that lived there. And when I was a kid, I would visit Butte and we'd have family reunions with all kinds of family from the area. And my mom's dad was a county commissioner, so he was involved with sort of helping the town to grow, but also he was always trying to make it beautiful. And I just had this long history. My family history of with Butte was very, very long, and so I had this idea in 2020 during the time when a lot of the races were canceled and people were kind of creating their own adventures. I was creating my own adventures. I had the idea that if I was to create a run in Butte, maybe I could do something that would connect my family's history and then sort of express that through a route that my feet ran, and that would inevitably bring me closer to Butte. So I started to create a route that would run me from my aunt's ranch to the cabin that my grandma had lived in during the Depression, maybe run out to the field where we had spread my grandfather's ashes. And just if I could run and connect these places, it would just be meaningful to me. So I started that plan. Eventually, the routing that was necessary to do what I just described didn't really make any sense. And so I started to modify the idea into just a more of a just a general loop around Butte. And by 2022, I think it was, I had a single loop around Butte that I had mapped out. And when I had visited Butte a couple of times, I had just sort of checked out certain areas to see if it was real or not. But for my 49th birthday in 2022, I ran the first half of my idea, which was going through some sections that, from all I could tell, nobody had ever run there before. So it was a mission to see if it was even possible. Um, it was possible. It was a lot of fun and it was beautiful. And so I decided that I would run the entire loop the next year. And so as I was starting to prepare for that in 2023, my wife asked me if I would want anybody to join me because I was planning on just basically running it myself and she would crew me. But her suggestion to have some friends join me was kind of cool. So I thought, yeah, it would be kind of fun to have some friends. So I reached out and we ended up with five other people who joined me. And so in June of 2023, the six of us ran this loop around Butte, and we had an aid station at my aunt's ranch. And so I still got to have the family history connection into the route. And it was just a really cool thing. It was just the six of us doing a thing all on our own. Every runner had their own crew that followed them to designated crew access points. And we treated it like it was kind of like it was a real event, even though there wasn't really any aid provided. There was one location where there was going to be where we knew we needed aid access, but crew couldn't get there. So my parents volunteered and we set up an aid station. And it was just an awesome experience. And then everyone was afterwards was like, that was cool. Thank you. We love this route. And people started saying, this should be a real event. I realized this should be a real event. And so I started to talk with the Forest Service and other permitting agencies to learn what would it take. I went to in October, I think it was, of 2023. I went to a conference for race directors so I could just learn more about what it would take to be a race director. We we attempted to have the race permitted for 2024, but timing wise, it didn't work out. We weren't going to get permits. So in 2024, we decided to run a fat ass. So I invited 10 runners to come run a version of the course that was modified based on what we learned in 2023. And all 10 showed up, and I think 7 finished. And so it was again a super awesome learning experience. My wife Leah and I ran an aid station again at the same place my parents had the year before, where a crew couldn't get to. And it was just a really great way to practice putting this thing on. We practiced our runner accountability plans. What happens if somebody goes off course? We were able to just think about this event in a practice in scenario. And so and by the summer of 2024, all this planning we had done, the test running we had done, the relationships that I had established with the permitting agencies allowed us to get our permits in the summer of 2024 for an event in June of 2025. So this last June, we were all set up. We had a limit of 100 runners, and yeah, we sold out our registration in March. And this race happened because I wanted to create something that honored my family's history in this place. And over time, learning what I needed to do to be a race director to make this happen was an immense amount of learning. And then it was just very stressful getting it actually going. But it was a success in the end. A lot of runners talked about how even though it was our first year, officially putting it on, it felt like we had been doing it for years. And I think part of our practice had led to that. But yeah, it was. I think I felt like at some level early on, I had thought that there was a natural progression from being a runner to becoming a race director.
Mhm.
One of the things that surprised me as I started to make my race was that the overlap of skills between running and race directing was very small. I think like my ability to create a route and whatever, like my mapping skills came in pretty handy. But boy, it's all about event production. I had to learn about renting equipment and buying equipment, and just there's so much stuff just to do to create the infrastructure to support the event that has nothing to do with running. So it was a huge learning thing. But it was also very satisfying at the same time to invite runners to run this thing that I had thought up. It's such a creative endeavor in the end that I had 90 people finish the race. 90 people went and ran 100 miles on a route that I designed and I designated. And, now all these people have, lifetime memories. They have buckles to
Yeah.
prove that they did it. And yeah, it was quite a thing in the end to put it all together. And but yeah, it was a lot of work, a lot of work.
What would you say now reflecting back on it a few months later, what would you say is you're most proud of in that process, Wes?
Uh, I think it is the greeting of the runners back at the finish line when they have now finished it. And now, I made a real point to greet every runner at the finish line. Unfortunately, there was two in the middle of the night. I kept taking naps trying to sleep between runners, and there was two runners who when I went out to greet them, they had been a little bit too fast and they were sitting down. I'm like, oh man, I missed you too. But but greeting them at that finish line was the thing that really made it all worth it to me because I got to hear from them, the good, the bad, the complaints about the course, the love for the course. Um, the feelings that I have when I finish a race and I talk to the race director, as a runner, that's the feeling that I expect and that I like. I like that closure, that the sort of putting the finishing touch on the event. It's like, okay, cool, I've done it. I got my award. I got to talk to the person who invented this thing, and so for me, being on the other side of that, that was the best part of it. And my race director friends had told me, when I was complaining about, man, this sucks. I hate this. This is way too much
Yeah.
work. My friend said, hey, listen, you have to wait till the good part. You have to be at the finish line. You can't judge the experience until you've done that. So after having been through the finish line with all the runners, um, I can say that's the best thing for me is just knowing what an impact it's had on them because right these people didn't just show up that morning and decide they were going to run this thing. They had all registered months and months before. They had trained for it, so their life was focused at some degree on this accomplishment to get this thing done. And so when I was able to be there to welcome them back and give them their award, it was a full circle thing for me too, and it was very 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 rewarding.
Yeah, and I noticed you had a great group of volunteers from the local community there. As I was, we ran into some people wearing the volunteer shirts at the stores when we were out, and then we came up to the finish line a couple times to watch runners come in. What was the overall response you got from the community of Butte as a whole?
Really great response from the community, and I think part of that can be attributed to relationship building that I started 9 years earlier than when this race happened. So in 2016, I was visiting Butte and I wanted to go for a run. And so I reached out to the local running group on Facebook and said, hey, I'm visiting. Anybody want to go for a run? And a local runner replied and said, yeah, I'll go for a run with you. And so his name is Ozzy. And that's Ozzy and I are still friends. And Ozzy ran the Copper Kings 100 this year. And I feel like the relationships that I started building with Ozzy in 2016 led to me meeting other runners in town. Uh, everything, all the success I feel like that I was able to have with the Copper Kings 100 really comes from the relationships that were organically formed through the friendship of running, and then later when I was starting to put the event together or asking how can I was talking to I talked to the woman who race directs a mountain bike race in Butte, a 100-mile mountain bike race. I talked to Forest Service rangers. I talked to retired Forest Service rangers, and just by meeting with these people and be genuinely, asking for their advice, I feel like they started to get involved. They got behind our event as well, and so. Um, those relationships led me to meet other people who eventually became sponsors. Certainly, relationships led to people who wanted to come volunteer and be a part of the event and help serve the runners. And so, yeah, the community response was really good. Oh, another thing I did, I also went and visited some of the local service organizations and just talked with them about what we're doing. So, I have a friend who's involved with the Rotary Club, and so I went and met the Rotary Club. But yeah, just it was important to me that, especially since I don't live in Butte, it was important to me that I wasn't viewed as somebody coming in from out of town, to take all this money. I mean,
Right.
it's I think people have a perception that somehow race directors are making money, which that's another thing that I've learned is that this is a way to lose all your money for sure. Um, but yeah, I wanted to come in and create an event that felt authentic to the place. And I really, what I my overall hope for this event is that it can survive beyond me and that the community will take it over. And there will be aid stations that will be captained by somebody who has, never run before, but they love what we're doing and providing in the community. Aid station volunteers that we had this year, some of them had never run before, may never ever run, but they really loved what this race brings to the community. And some of our sponsors similarly gave us stuff that we needed because they just loved that we were bringing something so positive to Butte. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no.
I love it.
And I second that, as I have family. I was actually born in Butte, and my wife and I met in Butte, and our two oldest children were born in Butte, and we got families lived there their whole lives. And that was something I talked to you about at the event was thank you for bringing something positive to the community. Because Butte's had its tough times, and Butte's a very resilient group of people that are tough and they're loyal. But you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. They're going to be loyal to somebody that's bringing something to them, not taking away. So I think you're absolutely right. Those relationships you built without expecting anything, but because it was the right thing to do, are so crucial for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so grateful for the way it all worked out. And so my hope is that we can just continue to build this sort of grassroots feeling thing. Continue to have that community support as we invite more runners from around the world to come experience Butte. Because I think about my grandfather who was helping to run Butte from the governmental side when I was a kid, and he was always trying to make Butte more beautiful and bring more people to Butte. I feel like this is an excellent opportunity that I have with the platform I have and just my position in the sport to step into this race director role, but do so as a way to bring new visitors to a town that is so special and is so meaningful to my history. A lot of the people who ran the Copper Kings 100 had never been to Butte before, and they had no idea what was going on in Butte. And if they'd ever heard of Butte, they might have just, heard about mining. Maybe they heard about the Berkeley pit, or something that's like maybe they heard about how rough and tumble it is on St. Patrick's weekend or whatever.
Yeah, man.
Um, but like I think that the people get to come and experience Butte through the Copper Kings 100. They see a different kind of thing because obviously now they're running this course. They're experiencing nature. They're getting this really special connection to the earth and the spiritual thing that I've experienced. I think they're getting a touch of that too. And so everyone walks away with a whole new appreciation of Butte and their own connection to that place too.
Well, I'm so thankful you brought it to Butte. I look forward to putting it on my radar to train, and maybe that's my goal is next summer I'm ready for 100 miler. So
That'd be awesome.
yeah, dude, I'd be honored, and it'd be a way for me to share with my family. So there's so many benefits for me there. But before we wrap up, Wes, I want to know, looking ahead for you, what's next on the trail, behind the camera, or in the race director role? What do you got going?
Well, I uh this year was a busy year. Earlier in the spring, I ran two gigantic races, the Arizona Monster 300 in April, followed by the Cocodona 250 in May. And then with the Copper Kings 100 in June, uh, I was I was tremendously stressed out for all that time. And so after the Copper Kings, I was able to just sort of take a little bit of a breath and be like, okay, I'm not gonna have anything on my race calendar for a little while. I need to take a break. I've been going for, kind of going for years now. Um, so my current focuses are on some film production. So I got my Arizona Monster video done as we're talking now about a little over 2 weeks ago. I'm currently editing my video of the Cocodona 250. So I'm looking forward to sharing that experience hopefully soon, but editing takes me so long. So I'm working on that. I am planning on my wife is going to run the Sedona Canyons 125, which is effectively the second half of Cocodona. She's going to run that in May of 2026. And so I am going to uh, step up to be her crew as well as her pacer. So every year at Cocodona, my wife has been there crewing me. And so in 2026, we're going to flip our roles and I'm going to crew and pace her at the Sedona Canyons 125. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm starting to think about what my next major race challenge might be. And there is a race in Tennessee that's been calling me for a while. And so I've been starting to watch some YouTube videos to start getting into my head. So I don't know if it's going to be next year, but it might be. Anyway, I'm looking at the Vol State 500K, which is I think they refer to it as a journey run. A lot of the racers aren't necessarily racing it. They're just trying to get from the start to the finish. But essentially, it's a run slash walk across the state of Tennessee in July when it's way too hot and way too humid. It sounds like a real challenge. It sounds pretty awful in a lot of ways, but I feel like that's the challenge that I'm ready for next. One of the things that I did do this in this year when I was doing my major back-to-back 300 and 250 was I dialed back the intensity a little bit so that my finish times were slower so that I could do both of those events. But I loved so much the feeling of sort of hiking with purpose. Like there's a certain it's possible to move quickly and efficiently without running. So I was walking 15, 16-minute pace for most of those things. And that's still pretty, you're still moving pretty well and making pretty good time, even though there was very little running involved. And so I'm interested in exploring a little bit more this idea of journey running, moving across long distances, and experiencing different towns and experiencing a different place from my feet. So that's currently where my head's at. That's what I'm focused on.
Wes, thanks so much for joining us. It's been an honor to learn more about you and to share your story. Where can our audience connect with you to be part of your story?
On Instagram, I have the handle Midpack Elite. And on YouTube, you can just search for Wes Plate. You can find my channel there. I also have a website, westplate.com, which is sort of a clearinghouse of all my information. So if you just go there, you can get linked to my Instagram and linked to my YouTube. It also has my ultra history listed there, so you can see everything and watch, link to videos of those different events. So yeah, I think westplate.com would be a great place to start.
Awesome. Wes, thank you so much. Best of luck to you and all the stuff you have coming up and all things work out. I'll see you in Butte next summer.
I'm looking forward to it. All right, thanks a lot.
What'd you think of that conversation with Wes? What an amazing human. Get over to his YouTube channel at Wes Plate. Fantastic behind the scenes look at these epic long runs he's doing. Monster 300 was 300 miles across the state of Arizona. Just an aspiring dude that my favorite part of the show was hearing from him that how in these multi-day events where he's running and hiking for multiple days across rough terrain that he knows by day 3 his body quits fighting him. His body succumbs to the will of his mind and it does what it's capable of doing, which is pushing way further than it wants to at times. And to me, it was such a great lesson for all of us in life that not just out on the trails, but in our day-to-day activities, if we always seek comfort, we're going to be where we've always been. Right? If the first time we feel pain and discomfort, we stop doing what we're doing, we're not going to get, and we'll never know what's on the other side if we could just push through. So I would love to hear from you all. What was your favorite part of this week's conversation with Wes Plate? Do me a favor, get over, like, subscribe, share our stuff. Get over to Wes Plate on YouTube. Give him a like and a subscribe and help us continue to reach our mission of being the most impactful podcast in the world. Thank you for being here this week. Have a great week. Do some thinking, do some hiking or running, get out in nature, and we'll see you next week.